Students, and welcome back to the Lore of the Iron Kingdoms with me, Professor Caster. As mentioned in that ginormous two-player box set painting and stat card read and review video I did a few days ago, this is the shorter form of each of those sections. For everybody that did watch the hour, thank you, and for everybody that did not have that type of time, here you go. You can watch it in more bite-sized aspects. But again, if you could, before everything is set, please hit that like button, subscribe, and comment. Please do all those fun things, because that helps the great gods of the YouTube algorithm keep pushing this out to the rest of the folks that might be into the Warmachine and expand our community. Also, again, thank you so much, Steamforge, for sending us this two-player box set for review. And without further ado, let's get to it. And we're starting with the Hounds. This is Tatiara of the Hounds. The Hounds are basically a commando unit, but updated with new tech. We start with the black, then the gray coat. Then we move on to the black contrast paint on all the points that are supposed to be contrasted. We stuck with the box art just because that makes my painting style way faster if I just know what colors are going to be before we start. Then we move on to the red coats. That shield is looking beefy. And then we move on to the grayscale as well. Start with light, then cover the pieces you want with the darker leather as well. And it always looks fantastic. Pretty happy with how those turned out. Then we finish off the metals, make some, do any kind of specialty paints, paint her goggles up with their colors, and hit it all with a little bit of ink wash so they set in. And this is a unit, but we're just going to read each individual because I broke them up in the video of each painting set we did. So her name is Tatiara. She is part of the Hounds. Her speed is 6, mat 6, rat 6, defense 14, armor 15. She has tough, immunity to fire, immunity to corrosion, pathfinder, dual attack, and advanced deployment. Her special abilities are the alchemical mask, since I feel like most of these guys are very similar to the assault commandos of Khadors' previous renditions. So that alchemical mask, as mentioned, allows this model to not suffer gas effects, and when determining line of sight, she can ignore cloud effects and concealment granted by cloud effects. She is girded, so this model and friendly models base to base gain resistance to blast. She has grant inspiration for the rest of her unit, which gives them a +1 to their attack rolls. She has shield wall, so if she's base to base contact with this unit, they gain +2 armor and cannot be knocked down. Her weapon, or her two weapons, because she has dual attack, are Death Whisper Carbine, which is a rat 6 or 7 because of her ability, range 8, range of fire 1, and POW 6, and she can shoot with it in melee. It is armor piercing, that's why it's a POW 6, so when calculating the damage with this weapon, have the base armor stat of the model's hit. So that's awesome. Also with armor piercing stuff, when you have the armor, the spell stuff is added after its halved. So say they had a +2 armor, so it would be, a 20 goes down to a 10, then 12, you see where it is with a +2. But if they have a negative, that adds in afterwards. So if they go down to a 10, then they go down to an 8 with a -2. Hopefully that makes sense. So this is pretty staggering for heavily armored models, but at a POW 6, not the worst of the armor piercing weapons that I've seen. Then she has her battle shield, which is a mat 6 or 7 due to her granted inspiration ability, a range 1, and a POW 12, which is actually pretty decent POW for a melee weapon. So pretty happy with that. Much better than the Jackal's melee weapon, but of course he's carrying a rocket launcher, so that makes a little bit more sense. Her armor piercing round is a pretty fantastic in the long run. I was not able to fully utilize it just because since they are a speed 6, it is a little bit more difficult to get them up to the other army that wants to try to stay as far away from people as they can. So the name of the game for this team is try to get them into melee as quick as possible, since they do have the ability to shoot in melee, and their battle shield is good in melee, and then they have dual attacks, so they are pretty staggering to enemies that they can get into melee with. But let's move on. Alright, we are moving on to Fedeniak, or I just call him Fedi because, well, it's easier for me to say. You can see the gray coat, followed by, of course, the black coat, as all of these are going to be pretty similar to the setup on here. And as you can see with the black contrast coat, it does give a nice little mini highlight to that. And then we go to the red contrast paint that we used for these guys. Makes them, I don't know. Really, I feel like the contrast paint really does make these way quicker to paint. Then, of course, we go over to the leather coats. Light leather followed by heavy leather. In the areas you want to be heavy leather, or dark leather, sorry. Heavy leather, dark leather. And then this is the final piece after we add the metals in. I only use 2 metals, which would be a silver and a copper, and then I hit them with an oil. And then we do any cleanup, and we finish up the base, as you can see. Fetty is part of the Hounds. Speed 6, Mat 6, Rat 6, Defense 14, Armor 15, and while the other lady's active, his Mat and Rat go up to a 7. He has Tough. He's immune to fire, immune to corrosion, Pathfinder, dual attack, advanced deployment. He has the alchemical mass, so he ignores cloud effects or gas effects. And then he ignores line of sight and concealment from cloud effects. He is also girded, so while he's base to base with this model and friendly models base to base, gain resistance to blast, so that's fantastic. Keep these guys close together. His granted ability for the unit is Prowl. So while this model is in play, the entire unit gains Prowl. So while they have concealment, they have stealth. Which again, with the warcaster having Fog of War as one of her chosen spells, it does make pretty much these guys invisible to anybody unless they ignore stealth, so that is where it is. They all have shield wall, so you want to keep these guys tight. Gets them up to an armor of 17 while they're together. His weapons include a grenade launcher, Rat 6, range 12, rate of fire 1, AoE 2, POW 12, 8, and he does have the ability to shoot in melee, which for blast damage for somebody who has girded, probably not going to do all that much damage to himself, especially since he has a 17 armor if he's next to somebody and a 15 armor out, so you would have to roll over a 7 to really damage him. Then he has on his grenade launcher Arcing Fire, so when this model attacks with this weapon, he can ignore intervening models, so he just shoots over people. Very convenient. Yeah. So, and then of course he has his battle shield of a Mat 6, range 1, POW 12. So again, you want to get these guys into melee, but this guy's grenade launcher does allow him to do some decent damage, especially to some guys that are low armored, because even if he misses, that's a POW 8. So if they only have an armor of like 11 or 12, that's only a dice -4, which is easily get overable for that one. So yeah, makes him fantastic. But again, the Hounds like being in melee. Try to get them as melee as quick as possible. And hopefully the Prowl keeps them alive long enough to get into melee. So I can see them really being expanded out with some, once you add more pieces outside of just the 2-player box set. But with just the 2-player box set, these guys actually did pretty well. None of them actually, well, I think whenever we played, only one of them got killed, but I can't remember which one it was. But that was after a few rounds of being shot up. So there you go. But let's move on. All right, and then we move to the last guy, Scrobola, or however you say that. I'm going to call him Scrobes. You see the gray coat that we added, followed by the black coat with his fantastic little machine gun looking thing. Again, the contrast paints really do make this way faster. Or you can always water down some of your normal paints and use them kind of like a contrast paint. I don't know if that would work. But then we add the red coat as well. And then we add the what leather pieces we have, starting with light leather, working to dark leather. Just because I always keep those. And then we have him with his finished metals and all of his fun stuff painted up and inked down, so everything kind of blends in together. And then we move on to his stat line. He has a speed 6, mat 6, rat 6, defense 14, armor 17, tough, immunity to fire, immunity to corrosion, pathfinder, dual attack, and advanced deployment. He has all these standard abilities of these guys, being the alchemical mass, so he can ignore gas effects, and line of sight and concealment granted by cloud effects. He's also girded, so he has resistance to blast. What he grants is reposition 3, so after the unit moves that did not run or fail a charge, the units can move up to 3 inches, which makes these guys incredibly more mobile, because then it moves their base speed up to a 9 on the basic, or if they charge, you can get them up to a 12. So yeah, makes them even more great getting across the field and into melee combat, because that's where they want to be. And they, of course, they have shield wall, so it gets their armor up to an 18. So, with the full unit all active, nobody dead, he has a mat of 7, rat of 7. So, very, very useful. But his weapons are an assault cannon. It is a rat 6 base, or 7 with this unit. Range 12, rate of fire D3 plus 1, so you can get to going on some bullets there. POW 12, decent damage. He also has the gunfighter ability, so he can shoot in a melee with himself. His weapon abilities, he has volume fire, so he gains a +1 to the attack and damage rolls of this weapon against medium base models, and a +2 to attack and damage rolls against larger base models. So when he's shooting like a warjack or something at a large base, he gets up to a POW of 14 and a rat of 8 or 9. So yeah, he does. It's hard to miss if you're shooting at bigger things with this weapon. So very useful there. And since you can shoot multiple times, you can really start chunking away at things. And then, of course, he has his battle shield, as you can see. And his battle shield, again, is a mat 6, range 1, POW 12. So, very useful. You want to get these guys up in a melee, as mentioned multiple times before. But from ranged, this guy and the grenade launcher guy do some pretty decent stuff if they can hit their targets. At a mat 7 or a rat 7, you would think that was a little bit easier, but the models they're going up against can get some pretty high defense. So if you can't hit it with blast damage, it's gonna be pretty pitiful. So try to get you guys into melee, and then you can avoid all of those negativities. But